I think people forget how good Bret Hart was. Like, I think that we talk about it, we haven't seen a Bret Hart match in whatever it is, 20-ish years, right? I think people forget, and then you watch an older one, like I just interviewed X-Pac. And
I saw that.
And he talked about his match with Bret on Raw when he was 1-2-3 Kid. And I went back and rewatched it, and I was like, oh my gosh, like one of the best matches on Raw ever.
Yeah.
But then you start to, talk to anybody from that era, and almost everybody talks about if they got to work with Bret, that was their best match ever.
And I told Bret, it's funny, I saw Bret when we were in Calgary. WWE did a show at SmackDown in Calgary, and so I usually always go, like, my priorities in Calgary are always, I have to see Bret. We have to have dinner. We have to talk. We have to get together. We have to, because Bret and I are really close, and I told him that I feel like he is more celebrated now than he was when he was an active superstar in WWE, because when you're there and you're so deep into it, it's so easy to be kind of like, you have a lot of different flavors of ice cream that you can choose from. But when everybody steps back and looks at it, when all the smoke settles and the dust clears, you think about Bret's influence. Again, it goes back to being able to work with anyone from any walk of life and to be able to make it great. Yeah. And a lot of my favorite matches of Bret's were matches that he lost. And a lot of my favorite matches of my own were not matches that I won. Actually, hardly any of them were matches that I won. It was just about a perseverance that you feel from Bret. Like, Bret made you feel something. And whether it was working with The Undertaker, whether it was Mr. Perfect, whether it was the 1-2-3 Kid, whether it was with Davey Boy in Wembley Stadium, Shawn Michaels. I love, like, the intensity that Bret and Shawn had unbelievable chemistry together. And I think that, like, when I look at their rivalry, almost 30 years later, people are still talking about it. Yeah. It's because they both were so good. They were both the best. Yeah. But Bret is more celebrated now than he's ever been before. And, like, and I've said this before in interviews, but, like, somebody like Roman would say, like, Bret's, like, he's so inspiring to me. Like, everybody's favorite wrestler is saying that Bret's their favorite wrestler.
Yeah, and I think the thing with Bret is you can watch literally any of his matches. It's not like you have to pick 5 and those 5 are great.
Right.
Like, it's Bret Hart versus anybody.
Right.
And it's going to be probably that person's best match.
And he made he helped my dad so much. When I look at, like, and Bret always says, Jim helped me come out of my shell and Jim helped me find my personality. But when my dad and Bret were going into the Hall of Fame, it's funny because I was very, very, very adamant. At one point, it was approached, I was basically presented with the idea of my dad going in by himself. And I said, I want my dad to go in I want my dad and Bret in there together as the Hart Foundation, because that was my dad's favorite time in his career. That's when he had the most fun. That's when he was the most alive. That's when he just did his best work, and Bret just looked out for him so much, and they were just so close and such a well-oiled machine. And so as much as, like, in that moment, Vince was like, we can put your dad in by himself, I was like, I want my dad and Bret together. I want them together because my dad would have wanted that, And so that was really cool to be able to do that for my dad. It was something that I know he would have been so excited to be a part of the Hall of Fame.